Welcome. Today we're going to discuss the technique Crossing Talon and some of the more important principles, concepts, rules, theories, and strategies of the technique. So let's start out with some information that's typically overlooked about this technique. And that's the fact that there are two different variations of this technique demonstrated in the system. So what do I mean by that? Well, we have a long-range version, which is demonstrated in short form 3, and a short-range version, which is demonstrated in long 3 and our self-defense division. So why is that important to know? Well, because unlike some of our other techniques, they're not interchangeable with one another. So let's dive in and talk about some of the differences and why they're not interchangeable. But keep in mind that most of our applied maneuvers are positions of opportunity. So locks, chokes, holds, etc. happen because they were available. So another way to think about that is they were in a position where they recognized something and took advantage of it. Or we're starting in the middle of a fight. So if we take a look at the long-range version, starting with short form 3, we're doing this from circling wing, where we're starting to fight this opponent, and then he locks us and grabs our arm. So this is where we would be starting the technique. But we have a general rule that says check up any loose extremities. Right now, I don't really have to worry about this arm. I have to worry about their left hand. But notice what we have. Timing. He's really far away. This is a long-range technique. So I don't have to worry about that as much as if we were closer. So how can we deal with that? Well, we can deal with that by immediately attacking the right arm. So in this case, by going down on the circle to create a wrist lock, and then continuing that downward momentum to control their head below their waist. So let's contrast this with our self-defense version, or the long 3 version, where they're directly in front of us. Well, notice what happened. The range is different. What does that mean? We don't have the same timing to start dealing with this hand because we're going to eat that left. So how can we prevent that left from hitting us? Well, simple, just block it. But what happened? Well, I'm still trapped and I didn't get my major hand out. So how can we fix this? Well, right again, I'm going to be anchoring my elbow, but now instead of going down on the circle, we're going to be coming up on the circle to start blocking that other hand, but controlling them so that now we can go down and put them back to where we were. So again, just to reiterate, the beginning of the techniques, because they're done at different ranges, are not interchangeable with one another. Starting from that position, we're going to be able to do the exact same thing regardless of which version you're doing. But there's one more thing I want to talk about. Something that, again, is overlooked. We are doing our technique on our weak side, meaning everything we're doing is done with our left side. But that's where long 3 comes in. Long 3 teaches you how to do this on your strong side. So keep that in mind. You should be able to do this with either hand. But moving forward with the ideal phase, we're going to stick to the left side where we have them down. So now this is going to bring in the concept of economy of motion. So keep in mind, I want to hit him with my elbow. But what happened? I don't really have line of sight and I don't have the proper path of travel. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to make a cock a separate motion. But is that a good thing? I thought that goes against economy of motion. Well, yes, but again, take a look at our considerations. Where are their weapons? They're all being checked off right now. So we can take the time to start hitting them with this elbow. Except there's a problem. The minute I let go with my left hand, he can now start using that right hand. So this is going to bring in the concept of third handing. This is where we use an environmental object, in this case our body, to keep control of this, like if we had a third hand. So rather than using my arm, I'm now using my body to control that so that I can free up my hand and now get proper line of travel or path of travel and line of sight to deliver the strike. But notice what I'm doing. I'm delivering the strike using my arm muscles. I don't really have that much power. So how can we make it better? Well, this is where body English comes in. We're going to be shifting our weight so we can deliver power, but I'm also going to be pulling my opponent so I can get him closer to me without losing that third hand. So what I'm trying to do is opposing forces. I'm trying to pull and push. But this is going to bring in the concept of compact unit. We're using an elbow, so we want to make sure that we have a compact unit. I want my hand as close as I can to my body, and I want it as far away from my center line. This is done again vertically later, where we want to make sure that it's compact and it's not loose. And we do a final one at the end when we do our knee, where we want to, again, make sure your foot is as close to your leg as possible so that we can hit with a compact unit. But this is going to bring in another concept, lines and circles. Remember, where lines and circles begin, and vice versa, which is important because this technique does that all over the place, and we're going to talk about the pivot points. So if you notice what we're doing with the elbow, we're doing a line. If I was to do a circle, I don't have the target. So what I need to do is change that pivot point so that instead of using a circle, I can use a line. So just like we did the elbow on a line, we can now do this on a line by shifting the pivot point to the shoulder and the elbow. So remember, to create a line, you typically need 2 or more circles. So now that we have the line, we can now make a circle. So rather than pulling up with the line, since we just took all this time to get them down, what we're going to do is change the pivot point to the hand and anchor our elbow. So this is going to bring in the concept of locking and breaking. In this case, the neck and the elbow. Depending on how you execute this, you could get a break or a lock on both of those. But again, notice what we're doing. We went from a line to a circle, back to a line to a circle, back to a line. Now we can do the circle. So if you notice what we did earlier, we went line, circle, but we couldn't hit him because the target wasn't there. But now it is. Now, because we've changed the target and we're going to 2 different zones, I can use that line and then use that pivot point. But there's one more thing we got to talk about with this elbow. Body English. Just like we enhance the elbow here by doing opposing forces and moving our body, we can enhance this strike by settling our weight. We can do that by dropping the knees or picking our feet off the ground. So again, enhancing the strikes. And then doing the opposite, gravitational opposition to hit upward with the knee, taking advantage of the open in the triangle. But like a lot of our techniques typically do, we are left in the middle of a fight. This is for you to decide whether you want to leave or you need to continue hitting the opponent. We're going to do what we normally do and just leave and cover out. So now that we've talked about the rules, concepts, principles, theories, and strategies, let's demonstrate the technique fairly slow so you can see it once. Up. We hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system a little bit better. Thank you very much.